And now we have our next guest entering the stage. For y'all who saw the candidate forum that Damon hosted, he's not here today. This is how does I call you Tish all the time.
It's Letitia, but
it's
they
Letitia.
call it
Okay,
Tish.
I just want to make sure because I don't like you don't mispronounce a woman's name. You gotta make sure you say her name right. So I always just say Tish. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, everybody knows you as Tish.
Everybody knows me as Tish.
You have one name like Aretha, like you just say Tish.
That's
Everybody
right.
knows
That's
Tish.
right.
Yeah, yeah.
That's right.
Everybody knows Tish.
Tish, Beyonce. Yeah.
And the first time I saw you, right, the first time I
Cardi B, Tish.
the first time I saw you was in Mount Vernon when you were when a friend of yours was being sworn in, Lisa Copeland, as city councilwoman,
Exactly.
and you came and you spoke for her.
That's right.
Her and
That's
Andre Wallace were being sworn in, and you
That's
spoke
right.
for her.
That's right.
And that's I think the first time I've actually spoke
right.
to you.
That's right.
In this Mount Vernon City Hall
That's
that day.
right. That's right.
Yeah, so welcome to the show, and
Thank you.
first time let's give you an official round of applause. And if you can just pull the mic closer, can we make sure it moves? You pull it close. Yeah, you pull it to you, it moves. And so I want everybody to make sure they hear what you say.
Excellent.
So, Tish James, first question. First off,
Yeah.
now you are the Democratic nominee.
Correct.
Okay.
And she's got endorsed by everyone from Cuomo all the way down to
Yes,
City Council.
I don't know if you saw, but we just ran that on blackwestchester.com, and it showed like all your endorsements and stuff.
Thank you.
Because I forgot
appreciate
who endorsed you, the latest endorsement, but we ran that, and we ran who the other who else endorsed you as well.
Mm-hmm.
So why are you running now? You're the current I forgot to say you're the current
Public advocate.
public advocate.
Yes.
Now let's start there for people that don't know, because we try to educate people.
So the public advocate.
What
of
does
the
the public advocate do?
public advocate of the city of New York is second in line to the mayor of the city of New York.
Okay.
If anything should happen to Mayor de Blasio right now, I would become mayor for the next 6 weeks until there's an election.
Now that I did not know.
Yeah.
Yes, that's
Yeah,
quite
yeah.
impressive.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
so the public advocate is checks and balances on the mayor and the city council. I preside over the city council. I have the ability to introduce legislation, and in fact have introduced and passed more legislation than all previous public advocates combined. That includes Bill de Blasio, who was the public advocate before he became mayor,
Right.
Mark Green, and Betsy Gotbaum. And the last legislation that we passed was groundbreaking, banning salary history.
One of our listeners said, "Can you just move the mic closer, or
Sure.
just speak into the mic?" They're saying.
Banning salary history.
Okay.
Because I believe in equal pay for equal work, and the feminization of poverty is real. And so in New York City, they can't ask you about your previous salary, and they have to pay you based upon the value of your work, as opposed to
That's huge.
yeah. Because and we want to make sure that it's statewide law. So I want to codify it on a state level, and that's why one of the reasons why I'm running for Attorney General. So that was one bill. There's a number of other bills, but that's the one that I'm most proud of. We led the way to divest from gun retailers. I led the way to divest from fossil fuels. I led the way to divest from hedge fund managers who were investing in what they call underperforming real estate, which basically
Yes.
is real estate where poor people live, and
Yes.
they invest in those properties and then they evict those people. We stopped that practice. I have my office has handled over 32,000 constituent complaints, individuals who walk through our doors, without fancy lawyers and without fancy lobbyists, but individuals oftentimes with their problems in a plastic bag. And we've been really active as a public advocate of the city of New York, and we have used litigation as a means to get things done. I've sued the mayor of the city of New York at least 10 times, even though he was my friend and my ally. I sued him on behalf of disabled children, autistic children, behalf of parents, behalf of senior citizens, tenants, people in public housing. I sued the mayor, I sued the governor on behalf of children in foster care.
How'd that go?
Well, we settled.
Okay.
We settled the case, and we've seen a lot of reforms at the Administration for Children's Services, because I believe that the law can be an instrument for change. That's what I was taught at Howard University. The law should be an instrument for change, and that the law is sometimes a sword, can be used as a sword, and sometimes as a shield. And that's really critical at this pivotal moment in the history of this country, where you've got an illegitimate president who's racist, who's a sexist, a misogynist, who's got a problem with individuals who are different. He's Islamophobic, And we got to just we have to
He's
stand
everything
up.
phobic.
He's everything.
Yo,
And so-
I'm sorry.
Who?
I said he's everything phobic.
This is true. The president.
Trump.
Oh,
You
Jesus
just put
Christ.
the phobic's at the end of it. He's
Yeah.
whatever's in front of it. He's that.
So we got to stand up and we
Yeah.
got to fight back, you know. And given the fact that our ancestors died and bled for the right to vote, we can't sit idly by and sit on our laurels and not vote. And
Now-
so this Thursday, you got an opportunity to demonstrate that.
Now, you said you sued the governor.
Yeah.
So, that means if you like the governor now, if you become attorney general, the
Yeah.
governor would kind of be your boss, or you would
No.
you would answer to the governor.
No, the people are my boss.
Okay. Well, it means if you sued him, in other words, you would push back against.
Oh, sure, without a
You
doubt.
wouldn't rubber stamp just
No.
because he's.
Listen, as long as there are children in public housing in Buffalo with lead poisoning, I'm going to sue them. As long as there's children in NYCHA that are suffering from lead poisoning, given the conditions in public housing, I'm going to sue the mayor. As long as there's environmental degradation, environmental racism, I'm going to sue any companies that dump upon people of color. As long as you got homelessness all throughout the state, as long as you got a problem with discrimination against Muslims and discrimination against black people, discrimination against Latinos, discrimination against disabled individuals, I'm going to sue. I stand here in the spirit of Shirley Chisholm, unbossed and unbought, and I stand here because I know who I am, and I know the fact is that marginalized and vulnerable populations are struggling in this state, and then what they need is someone who's going to speak truth to power. So be it the president, or be it the governor, or be it any mayor in the state, I'm going to use the law to be the great equalizer and to demand justice.
As you can see from the paper in front of you, this issue, we have that in
Right here.
every corner. That's on that runs on every issue. We are unbought and unbossed.
She's
we
my
don't. Yes, yes.
And so is Barbara Jordan.
Right.
Yeah, you know, Barbara Jordan, you know, was was one of the members at the impeachment hearing for Richard Nixon.
Yes.
And so history is repeating itself.
It's interesting. I watch a lot of MSNBC, CNN, even Fox, because I like to see the different
Yeah.
versions of the story.
Yeah.
You know?
You always need to know what your enemy's thinking.
Absolutely. Now, and I did ask that question for a while because on the national level, what we're seeing is people being loyal to the party and not to the people.
Right.
So that's why I asked that question. Now, I want to. I read a lot of things, and people sometimes can't make heads or tails of what they read. So I'd like to give the candidates a chance to speak on it. Now, I know you were at the NYPAN in January. You were at the NYPAN.
Yes.
I know
It's
you
a
was
conference.
Yeah, and then Nina Turner was there and
Yes.
everything.
Yes.
And but then I read somewhere the Albany Union Times and I think the New York Times said that you snubbed the Working
Families
Party,
Yeah.
and a lot of people don't understand because
Yeah.
it looked like they were supporting you all the way back then, and then you snubbed them. So explain that for the people.
So, what happened was when this vacancy became available, right? I had 2 weeks to secure the Democratic nomination, not the Working Families Party nomination, but the Democratic nomination. 2 weeks, work 62 counties.
Wow.
Work all these delegates and get their support. Speak to a lot of elected officials. My focus was on securing the Democratic nomination.
Right.
And there were individuals who had some issues with WFP for whatever reason. And so I just decided I had to make a decision, had to make a choice. And so I made a decision. It was difficult. And sometimes in the business that you're in, you got to make difficult decisions. As a public advocate, difficult decisions. City council member, difficult decisions. Attorney, difficult decisions. As an attorney general, difficult decisions. And as a candidate, difficult decisions. And I made the difficult decision. I would pursue just the Democratic nomination at this time because there were so many questions and issues and differences with the Working Families Party. Even though there is no sunlight between me and the WFP, I am the face of the WFP party, the Working Families Party, and will always be that. And I look forward to being on their line come November.
Okay. Now, the reason I did ask you, another reason I've seen, and once we announced who were going to be in the show,
Yeah.
Some people from NYPAN and some people from the Working
Yes.
asked me, they were like, well, we supported her, she turned her back on us,
Yeah.
and I wanted to, and I wanted to, I know there are candidates that have had both lines.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I
Yes.
was just like.
But that was when there was an open primary, and that was when you had a period of time to secure the support and try to resolve differences. I had 2 weeks, 62 counties, hundreds of delegates, hundreds of elected officials, because this happened like
That's
no
a lot.
no one was expecting it. I was, as you know, considering running for the mayor of the city of New York. That was my focus.
That's what we thought you were going to do.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the word. That was the
it's
word.
the truth. I was thinking about running for mayor, and that's what I was working on. And then I had no idea that, the former attorney general would resign.
Right.
And so I was literally at dinner when it happened. And when the appetizer was served, I saw the article, and everybody went, "Oh!" And then by the time dessert came around, he resigned.
Right.
Wow.
Right.
And I had 2 weeks.
Right.
2 weeks.
You-
And the road to victory was the Democratic Party.
Right.
You've been
Now,
an assistant attorney general, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So I've already been in the job.
She's got experience.
So,
I've already been there.
so speaking about Snyderman stepping down,
Yeah.
before he stepped down, I know you can't speak, and I've asked your opponent last
Yeah.
week. I know you can't speak to specific cases.
Yeah.
But one of the last things he did before was bring charges on the mayor of Mount Vernon.
Yes.
And then the mayor challenged the authority
The
of
constitutionality.
the attorney general's office to be able to prosecute him.
Yeah. He challenged the authority of Barbara Underwood, who was acting.
Well, that too, but he
Yeah.
first charged that the attorney general's office didn't have the authority,
Yeah.
and then she didn't have the authority because she wasn't elected by
Correct,
the legislature,
correct.
which she then was.
Yes.
So I just wanted to speak about the authority of. I know you can't talk about the case,
Yeah.
but people that are listening from Mount Vernon have been hearing so much about what authority that office doesn't have. So I would like you to speak about the authority that the office does have.
So the office of Attorney General is codified in law and in our Constitution, in the state, and it has a wide range of responsibilities. And what people need to know is 60% of what the Attorney General does is not sexy work. It's you represent the state of New York. You're the people's lawyer. You represent all state agencies. You also have the power to work with the controller of the state of New York. They have this agreement called Operation Integrity.
The integrity unit or something like
Integrity
just
unit,
something.
where they're
something.
basically trying to deal with corruption. And we've had a problem with corruption in the state of New York. You've had 30 elected officials who've engaged in the perp walk in the last 10 years. Convicted, sentenced, penalized, whatever. And primarily it's for graft. It's because they've been using, ciphering off public funds for their own personal use.
Which is what this mayor just happens to be
And so
charged with.
the
Yeah.
controller of the state of New York uncovered some information, referred that case over to the Attorney General, and the Office of Attorney General is now prosecuting this individual. And that's an agreement that they have, and that's one of the responsibilities of the Office of Attorney General. The Office of Attorney General also has the ability to prosecute individuals for consumer fraud under Article 63, for deceptive business practices and misleading advertising. They also focus on the Martin Act, where they police Wall Street. They've got criminal jurisdiction under that. They do Medicaid fraud. They go after individuals who engage in crime, organized crime. They've got an organized crime task force. They've got a real estate financing bureau. They've got a charities bureau, which deals with not-for-profits, which has a criminal aspect to it. So they've got a broad breadth and depth of enforcing state law. They also do affirmative litigation whenever you can establish pattern and practices where individuals are violating the rights of individuals. They also have an enforcement role, which is why it's really critically important that we enforce the role, given the fact that the federal government, under this illegitimate president, is basically refusing to enforce federal law.
Right.
And they also have an advocacy role where you can introduce bills and things like that. And so I would like for the Office of Attorney General to have original jurisdiction so that you can prosecute, so that you can investigate corruption on your own without going through the
Our other co-host just walked in the door,
Hello,
Dr.
co-host.
Robert Baskerville.
without going through the governor of the state of New York.
He
So that's
found
what
out you was going to be here. He went to get dressed. He
Oh,
came
he
back
did. He
home.
looks really nice.
He dropped me off, then went back to get dressed because he wanted to be proper when you came
Really?
to
Oh, he looks very proper.
No, he's being kind. He told me he would not allow me on set if I did not have on a tie.
You look
I
very
don't
good.
wear a tie often, very rarely, so he saw that I had one. That's what happened. So
Yes.
So that's what the Office of Attorney General does, and so I understand that the trial is happening this weekend, but I'm still campaigning. The election is Thursday, and I'm urging everyone to get out and vote and just remember what our ancestors did for our right to vote.
now, before Bob gets in, I wanted to ask one more question, as far as say criminal justice. Now,
Yeah.
you know, African Americans, unfortunately, have been killed
Yep.
by shot at, killed
Yep.
by the police. The Eric Garner situation, while it was against New York City NYPD policy, it wasn't against the chokehold. Wasn't against the law.
Correct.
And then just before the Raynette Turner incident in Mount Vernon, the sixth woman to die in the month of June 2015. Everybody remembers Sandra Bland. She was the most famous of them all.
And there was a young lady in Buffalo who was found
Right,
in a cell.
right.
Yeah.
And so I just before the Raynette Turner incident, Cuomo signed the executive order, I guess, and where the Attorney General is automatically
Yeah.
the special
Prosecutor.
right in cases dealing with custody of the police.
That's right.
Can you speak on that, because
Sure.
that's a major concern to our community,
Without a doubt.
you know, and you know, just because, and no disrespect, but everyone who looks like us is not for us, so
That's right.
I want them to hear from you.
So, as you know, as a city council member and as the public advocate, or as the public advocate of the city of New York, I went to court to get the grand jury minutes in the Eric Garner case because my eyes don't lie, and because what we all witnessed, the death of Eric Garner, individuals should have been held accountable. Unfortunately, we were not successful, but we went to court to argue for those grand jury minutes because I believe the grand jury process is anachronistic, and I believe that there should be more transparency to the grand jury system because of the inherent conflict between and their inherent relationship between police and prosecutors. Individuals need to know that, in fact, the grand jury process, particularly as it relates to Eric Garner, was fair.
You said they need to know it was fair, or it was fair.
That we need to
Oh,
know.
okay.
We need to know. That's why I went to court. Because
Right.
I wanted to read the transcript
Right,
to see what was presented.
right.
But unfortunately, we were denied. And individuals, there needs to be more transparency. So we got to change the law with respect to the grand jury process. And as the next Attorney General, I plan on doing that. I also, in the aftermath of the Eric Garner, my office wrote a letter to Eric Snyderman and to the governor, urging them to have the Attorney General appointed as a special prosecutor. We initiated that. And so I'm glad that the governor issued an executive order, but it's just an executive order, which
Right.
can expire
Right.
or be rescinded.
Right.
And it needs to be codified in law. It needs to be permanent.
Well, I'm glad you said it because I wanted to bring that up.
And so we will be urging that when we become the next Attorney General of the state of New York as well. It's important that you have independent eyes and ears to investigate individuals who die in police custody and who die as a result of police interaction. But the law needs to be broadened because it only extends to individuals who are unarmed.
Right.
And so there are situations like, for instance, what we saw in New York City, where a police officer shot someone, and then the video, he did not know he was on videotape.
That was in Brooklyn, right? Was that
was
the
in
one in Brooklyn?
Brooklyn.
Right.
Was about to plant a gun on an individual, and then reconsidered. It's important that your listeners know that I led the way in the city of New York to provide members of NYPD body-worn cameras.
Yes, I heard that.
Because whenever there is a street encounter, we need an objective view of police street encounters. But that program needs to be expanded statewide, and we plan on advocating for that as the next Attorney General
I want to
of the
address.
state of New
I just
York.
want to address a listener
Yeah.
because they misheard me. because they
Yeah.
said, why, if the police acquitted the chokehold, if it's illegal? The chokehold was against police policy,
Yeah, it wasn't
but it
illegal.
is not illegal,
Correct.
and that's why they weren't charged, and that needs to be changed.
Yeah, well, there is a law pending in the city council. A council member, Rory Landsman from Queens, has introduced that bill, and we hope that it is passed, and we hope that we outlaw the chokehold in the city of New York. But it's important that we also reform our criminal justice system, period. One, I support the legalization of marijuana. Because the war on drugs
That's
is
my kind of girl. No, I'm just kidding.
because the war on drugs is a war on black and brown people.
That's right.
Absolutely.
That's why.
Two, there's too many people. We need to make sure that we do not criminalize mental illness. There's too many individuals who suffer from mental illness who are in our courts and in our jails, and poverty should not be a crime. We should also reform our bail system. We need to get rid of cash bail. We need more alternatives to incarceration. We need to have open discovery because we don't believe that we should have trial by ambush. We need to make sure that we pass that prosecutorial misconduct bill, which was passed by the governor. He did cite it into law, but there are some challenges to that law. But there is clearly we've got to have to get past some litigation because we know district attorneys oppose that bill. But prosecutors need to be held accountable for their misdeeds. My neighbor was the late Ken Thompson from Brooklyn, who, as you know, campaigned on focusing on reforming our criminal justice system, but also focusing on the integrity of convictions. And he had a conviction integrity unit, and as you know, prior to his untimely death, he was able to vindicate at least I think it was at least 30 black and Latino men and women who had been wrongly convicted, who had spent a significant amount of time in jail. So, and it's not just limited to Brooklyn; it's all over the state. And so we need conviction integrity review, and I would like to do that as part of working with the Innocence Project as the next Attorney General of the state of New York. So it's really critically important that we, again, reform our criminal justice system from top to bottom,
Absolutely.
because it is a perverse economic development engine, which unfortunately is based on the misery and the poverty of countless number of people of color and low-income people across the state.
Now, I know Lorraine has questions, and then Bob after.
I just have one question, and it's from an audience member. Donna Nolan, she wrote, I really want to know where she stands on illegal guns and the law we have signed by the governor and not enforced for 3.5 years for an illegal gun.
So I support the SAFE Act, which is one of the strongest gun control measures in the state of New York. But I think most importantly, as the next Attorney General, I want to go after the NRA. Because the NRA, believe it or not, is a not-for-profit organization. And the Attorney General has the responsibilities and duties to enforce the charities law and the not-for-profit laws. And I think, and this is my opinion, that the NRA is not a not-for-profit, does not engage in charitable activities, but is nothing more than a terrorist organization. And so I want to
Strong
use
words.
Yeah, when you go to as many funerals as I've had to go to, when you've had to hold as many mothers and grandmothers as I have had to do, as if you've seen too many lives, too many black and Latino individuals who unfortunately have not reached their full potential because of senseless gun violence, I plan on taking on the NRA as I've done. And all of those banks who finance the NRA need to know that their reputational risks are put in jeopardy when they finance organizations such as the NRA. And last but not least, we need to make sure that we fund organizations such as SNUG, those community-based organizations on the ground who are violence interrupters, and increase the peace in our communities. And talk about gun violence wherever we go, and talk about the need to resolve our differences, not by taking up a gun, that's a punk's way, but by resolving them through communication and through dispute resolution, and by just resolving them and saving the lives of innocent individuals.
Dr. Bob.
So firstly, let me formally welcome you to the show.
Thank you, Dr. Bob, for looking so formal and so serious.
Well, I'm going to lighten up in a minute, I promise. So it's a very crowded field
Yes.
for Attorney General, the Attorney General's race, and many of your competitors have made one of their key themes, a kind of anti-establishment critique.
Yes.
And I, insofar as I have followed the debate, I do know that there have been a number of critics who have raised questions about what they perceive to be an overly cozy relationship with the Democratic Party establishment here in New York State. Specifically, I happened to listen to the interview you did with Brian Lehrer a couple of weeks ago, and I know you did have an opportunity to address it, but I was cut short. But nevertheless, because I had to run into class, nevertheless, I know it is a concern for many of our listeners. There does seem to be an anti-establishment mood throughout the country, and especially here in New York, as you see a leftward drift. And I want to know, could you address this and tell us why, even though you may be solidly in the Democratic Party camp, nevertheless, you still think you're well-equipped, well-prepared to do the people's work and push us in a progressive direction.
I've got a 20-year body of work where no one has ever questioned my independence. In fact, prior to this vacancy, everybody would call me to a rally. Everyone would call Tish James. Everyone wanted to hear her voice. No one has ever questioned my independence. Now, all of a sudden, because the governor, in his good wisdom, decided to support me, now all of a sudden my independence is called into question. I don't think anyone can question my independence when children in Buffalo are being poisoned by lead. I'm not going to allow anyone to question my independence when I go after those individuals who are jeopardizing those babies. When I've got residents in public housing who are living in conditions, in squalid conditions, affecting their rent, affecting their health, threatening their health and their safety, I'm not going to allow anyone to question my independence when I sue any municipality, the mayor of the city of New York, or even the governor. When I sued the governor over the foster care children, because children were unfortunately in foster care for too long and they were abused and psychologically, physically, and sexually, no one questioned my independence. They said, "Go, girl." When I sued the mayor on behalf of tenants, because the city of New York, they had this concept of pour doors. You basically would build a unit, and the subsidized units, individuals would have to go to a separate entrance called a pour door, and those that were market rate individuals would have to go through a separate door. I got rid of that. I sued because that was discriminatory. When I sued,
smacks of some of the worst vestiges of racial discrimination.
Without a doubt, and we got rid of it. No one questioned my independence then. When I went against one of the most powerful developers in Brooklyn for building an arena for the worst team in the NBA, risking my political career, and taking him and joining with my community as we challenged him, no one questioned my independence then. So within the last 3 months since I've been on this campaign trail, there are individuals who are questioning, primarily because they've got a problem with Governor Cuomo. But Governor Cuomo isn't running for Attorney General. Letitia James is running for Attorney General. And each and every time I've had to scratch and claw and fight and use the law to stand up for people who have been invisible, people without a voice, people who are marginalized and vulnerable. And I'm not going to forget them. Why? Because I know where I come from. And as someone who comes from humble beginnings, whose mother was once on welfare, who once scrubbed floors, whose father was a maintenance man, but now as a candidate for Attorney General, and in all likelihood after Thursday will be, I recognize all that we had to go through and what our ancestors had to go through for the right to vote. And I'm constantly reminded of that. And so it's not a question. It's not an issue for me. It won't be an issue for me in the future because I know where my bread is buttered. And as someone who just came from at least 4 churches, I know who I answer to a higher power.
So we have a listener, Elias Goodsight, and I wanted to address him. He asked a question that you already answered. What is the role of the Attorney General in investigating
improprieties
in local government? I would ask him to, at the end of the show, go back and watch the video again because you actually answered that question. Okay. But I just wanted to let him know that it was asked. Sean Patterson Howard said, "Thank you for supporting SNUG. We need violence interrupters on the ground and in the community to do this work. We must combine traditional and non-traditional approaches for violence in the community." And I wanted to give you, we always hear in these situations, what a candidate, every candidate says, why they're the candidate. Who is Tish James the person?
So let me just tell you about SNUG. And again, 10 black men have been murdered in Albany, and one was a member of SNUG. And in fact, I met his father recently. So let's pray for him.
Okay.
Who is Tish James?
Yes.
Tish James comes from humble beginnings, as I just mentioned. One of 8. Mom was once on public assistance. Tish James is basically a fighter, a proud graduate of Howard University School of Law. And I wanted to walk the halls of Howard University because, Howard University was the laboratory for the civil rights movement. And it was there that I learned to be a freedom fighter. It was there that I learned to use the law as a means to address the inequalities in our nation, in our city, and in our state. And it was there that I learned about the Constitution and that no one is above the law, including the president, including the governor, including the mayor of the city of New York, and how the law historically has been a sword and a shield. But as I said today in church, we've been through this storm before. And, we've come out on the other side. And so no matter what's facing us and no matter what's challenging us, we have stood up time and time again against powers and forces and powers and forces that have violated our rights. And now we're all in the same boat now, as this president violates the rights of immigrants and Muslims and women. We all know what's at stake. And to be honest with you, everything is at stake. And so we've got to vote, just like President Barack Obama said 2 days ago at a rally.
Yes.
We've got to vote, that we've got to use the power that's in our hand, because our ancestors died and bled for that right, and you can't take it for granted.
Absolutely.
And we basically have been taking so much for granted. And this president has awoken us, a sleeping dragon, to the fact that with a stroke of a pen, he could take away so many of our rights.
Right.
And so now all of us have got to come out and vote. You got to vote on Thursday and in November in quiet dignity, in quiet defiance, and in quiet resistance to what is happening in our nation and in our state and in our cities. And so don't take this for granted. Vote. Vote Thursday. Vote Thursday and bring your friends, your family, and even your friend enemies. Vote. And vote for a champion, a true fighter. And her name is Letitia James. And make history, just like we made history in New York City. Let's make history across the state. Let's make history in New York State by electing Letitia James, a true fighter, and someone who has consistently and repeatedly spoken truth to power.
For those who are listening, because we have other guests coming, I would love to just talk to you for another 2 hours. But I want to give the people who are listening that may not know about you, how do they get in touch with you? Is there a website? Or is there social media? How do they find out more about you? So they can, and maybe even contact you if they want to help or something.
So my name is Letitia. That's Letitia James, 2018. You can also Google Tish. That's my nickname, Tish James, 2018. I'm all on social media, Twitter account, Facebook account, campaign. We're located in Brooklyn. We've got campaign offices here in Westchester. We're running. I just left Senator Andrea Stewart Cousins, who will be the next majority leader. I just left Senator.
And the next guest.
And the next
Oh,
guest.
Okay. So I just left her, and she's the next guest. And Senator Shelley Mayers and countless number. I've been endorsed by just about every elected official up here in Westchester and Black Westchester. And so I'm looking forward to being the next Attorney General of the state of New York. And I'm looking forward to enforcing the law, being creative, being innovative, challenging President Trump, rooting out corruption, and again standing up for the rights of New Yorkers and being the people's lawyer.
And I have one last question, and it is a Trump question.
Yeah.
Barbara Underwood has been very diligent in her investigation and what she is doing. Yeah. If elected, what would you do to continue the work she is doing to push back against this president and possibly get him out of office or whatever?
Barbara Underwood can stay in the office and she can do whatever she wants.
Right.
And so we're going to continue to focus on the Emoluments Clause, which is a clause focusing on self-enrichment. We're going to continue to focus on the Trump Foundation because he turned that into his personal piggy bank. We're going to continue to follow his money, his business transactions. We're going to continue to work with the Southern District. We're going to continue to work and follow Mueller's investigations. We're going to continue to focus on his obstruction of justice allegations and his charges. We're going to continue to focus on whether or not he's laundered money working with China, President Kim and Putin, these dictators and these autocrats. We're going to continue to focus on his relatives, who obviously met with the Russians at his hotel. We're
Yeah.
going to continue to investigate. All of a sudden, 10 years ago, he was almost bankrupt, and then all of a sudden he became flush with money. We know that domestic banks weren't loaning him any money. Where did he get that money from? All of that and more we're going to work on. And also at the same time, we're going to focus on, again, corruption and rooting out corruption and following the facts and the evidence wherever it lies, but also focusing on a crisis which is right around the corner, and that is student debt, and also consumer fraud, and abolishing ICE, and protecting immigrants, and protecting a woman's right to choose, and environmental racism, and the list goes on, and Medicaid fraud, and health care, and the opioid crisis, and the list goes on and on. We've done it before. We're going to do it as the next Attorney General, because the next Attorney General will be wearing high heels. And the next Attorney General, again, will be Letitia James, but only if you come out to vote. So I need you to get him out, get him out, and get him out.
We thank you because I know your schedule is busy, and I've been going through hoops for the last couple of weeks to get you here.
I'm here.
So I definitely appreciate, because a lot of people don't make the time, and the audience doesn't really get to hear. We may not ask the questions that other people ask. We ask the questions our audience wants to hear. So
I appreciate it. I really appreciate it. And then tell everyone again, from Buffalo, all over the state of New York, to Long Island, to Westchester, to New York City, please
Putnam
get out.
County.
Putnam County, Syracuse, Buffalo, Albany County, Ithaca, Rochester. Please come out and vote. I need everyone to come out and vote. And if we come out and vote on Thursday, this Thursday, we will be victorious, because I'm naming it and I am claiming it.
All
My
right.
name is Letitia James. God bless you and thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you very much.
Very good.